Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the Morning. 15 minutes to change our lives. This year is sponsored by the Kapelowitz family. Ilu Nishmas Veli Bas Yitzchak on her 17th yahrzeit. Just a little background on who this amazing person was. Her grandmother was with her grandfather, Oliver Shalom, had the first kosher bakery in Brazil. Sorry. Till today, everyone asks about their recipes, but they never shared with no one. Everything was done by their minds, and they did not want her dad and her uncle to follow this way. A huge shout out to our wives and to Michal for being in the background, for doing this amazing classes, and that for sure will help in my grandmother's aliyah, 100%. May her neshama have the highest aliyah with the coming Mashiach today, amen. And like was said, the schus of all our learning should be given over to that for her neshama and that aliyah. So when we are internalizing the messages of the chassidus we're learning, that should be as a schus for her. Okay, we're gonna learn in this week's parsha, Parsha Miketz. We're gonna learn a little sikha about Chanukah, and then if we have some more time, we'll go to Parsha Miketz. Go to Sichas Chelek Aleph, Sikha about Chanukah from Parsha Miketz. So let's see. Basically, we're going to ask a few questions, the differences. You can think to yourselves as we go, what's the difference between Chanukah and where the Chanukah comes from? Is from the Menorah and the Beis Hamikdash. So what are the differences? And then we're going to see how the differences express different time periods, and ultimately, what does it mean for us? Okay, Chanukah. It's Oishud Aleph in the Sikha. Mitzvah Chanukah here, ladlik er. The mitzvah of Chanukah, like we all did last night, I'm hoping, and it's to light, and especially if you did it on the time you went out in the streets, is to bring light. Heitzad, it says as er. So how do you get light? It's very interesting. Noitlim shemen, oy eit kedem. You take oil or wood or something similar, and what do? You take on physical, and you heat it up until it stops being physical. And then starts to light up. So what are you doing with gashmis? How do you light something? You take something physical, you burn it up, so it stops being physical, and that turns into heat and light, and that brings out that heat and light into the surrounding area. So the lighting the menorah was like what happened in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, what's the difference? The Beis Hamikdash, in the Beis Hamikdash, they'll light it, go out the whole night. Time of Chanukah, there's no oil to light the menorah with by the times of Chanukah. And Hashem did a miracle. That we found a pure jug with the signet and the special sign of the seal of the Kohen Gadol. Hashem shebepach hispik betzimtzum nemechad. That oil that was found was barely enough for one day. But what happened? A miracle happened. But and it lit magically for 8 days. In memory of this miracle, we light. In remembrance of this, we light the menorah for 8 days. Yeah, so we're lighting the menorah for 8 days. It was a miracle that was barely, find oil, and then that oil itself was miraculous that it lasted so long, because it was barely enough to last one day and it lasts for 8 days. So even though that the source for the menorah of Chanukah is from the Beis Hamikdash, they're very different in a lot of ways. What are the differences? First of all, the Beis Hamikdash, and the Beis Hamikdash didn't add everyday lights; it was the same amount. Here, Chanukah, whereas Chanukah, as we do, is every day we add another light. That's one difference. Second difference: the Beis Hamikdash by the Beis Hamikdash that lighted earlier on in the day. When it's when the light is still clear. Whereas the Ner Chanukah, the time to light it is when the sun is starting to set. It's getting, and that's when we light it. That's the second difference. The third difference, Ner is a Mikdash hayu b'fnim, ve'ilu b'Ner is Chanukah mitzvos la'neach al pesach beis b'chutz. The third difference is that Ner Chanukah in the Mikdash, it was lit inside the Mikdash, whereas the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is on the outside. Now, even though you're going to say this in 1 second, but I think the Chabad custom is lighted inside by the, by the main room over there, being the doorpost. So that's because throughout the generations, unfortunately, the galus and all the hardships of life, and the people around us that we lived amongst, so they weren't very nice to us, and we couldn't do it. But mitzad din, technically, halachically, it says that's where you meant to light on the outside. You meant to be persimmon this and you do it on the outside. But nowadays we don't do it because we follow the minhag. But minhag din, that's how it's meant to be. Whereas in the base of Mikdash, it was lit specifically in the heichel, inside. Fourth difference: mitzvahs neres hamishkan hamikdash haya bizman shloi haya lebnei Yisrael mechsem b'chinas gashis. Another thing, at the time of the base of Mikdash, when we lit the menorah, the base of Mikdash times and in the Mishkan was good for the Yidden. And we're going to elaborate on that a little bit. Whereas now, it's not exactly the same. So the four differences, before we continue just to keep track, the four differences is one, the base of Mikdash was the same amount, whereas we light every day, we add. The second thing, the base of Mikdash was specifically done in the day, we do it in the evening time or getting dark. And the third difference, in the base of Mikdash live in the inside and we light on the outside. And the fourth difference is that in the base of Mikdash, it was a time of abundant prosperity and it was all good for the Yidden, whereas Chanukah, the whole story of Chanukah clearly wasn't that good. So we see these four differences. Again, we have same amount in the base of Mikdash versus Chanukah. We have in the day versus in Chanukah is by the night. We have inside, whereas Chanukah is on the outside. And we have Begashmius and of course Baruchnis was good by times of the Mikdash, whereas Chanukah was a rough time. And we're going to continue going on this fourth point. Specifically, Bizman, Mishkan, and Midbar, specifically in terms of the Mishkan, when we were in the desert, we had everything we needed. The Zuman, Haya, Ad, Haman. Haman was prepared for us. Minashamayim, heavenly. Mayim, Hayalhem, Miriam, with water from the well of Miriam. Apmu B'Sheim, God lo itam. We were constantly clean. We had our clothing grew with us. Begashmish, everything was great. The Kachgam mitzvahs Mikdash, to the Menorah of the Mikdash. Nisna b'imei Shlema, which is in times of Shlema. Bizman b'ay sheir shalom shalom. In times of Shlema, it was very peaceful. It says Shlema al shem shalom haya b'yama. It was peace in these times. It was a very good time for him. In that time for the Jewish people, it says Ishloi nechsav az b'shalom. Nothing was lacking for the Yidden then. B'adrabah, and on the contrary, Rabim halu lemas. They were able to even get taxes. Moya az ishtachs gapnu ishtachs deinasai. Abundant wealth. The Yidden lived very comfortably. Everyone had his own field and vineyard and orchard to live off. They had a very easy lifestyle. Af beruchnin, also spiritually hayakein. Shekol shekain kishein leyehudi daigas gashris. Who mismaser legamer the mitzvahs. This is another cool axiom. But the Dvarim Aruchnim, Dvarim Yehudim, the Rebbe is saying that also being that it's physically that everything, so spiritually they for sure would have been good. Because by Yid, by nature of the Yid, even though we've been told otherwise, the Rebbe is saying by nature, when we have whatever we need, begashmius, so then we use it in ruchnis. Sometimes we get brought up thinking that we shouldn't have gashmius, but if we have gashmius, it takes away from the ruchnis, and run us away. Now, of course, we're not talking about splurging for no good apparent reason, but what the Rebbe is saying is, when a Yid has what he needs, begashus, you have a roof over your head, you have food on the table, you can pay for the kids' tuition, you can buy your clothing and whatever needs you have, like a mensch. So then, what do? Then you go to ruchnius, and then you take care of your ruchnius. It's not that we're going to have gashmius, and then it's going to take us away from ruchnius. Yeah, you can if your mindset's wrong, but the central idea is not that we shouldn't have gashmius. They're saying we should have gashmius, Because once you have Gashmius, you're taken care of, then Ruchnis you can focus on, like simply buying a nice menorah, by giving tzedakah, by buying things for Shabbos and making Shabbos look nicer, things like this. And your focus, it doesn't get sidetracked because you have the money. It gets pushed in the right direction, used out in the right direction. Now, in contrast to Chanukah, the Masam Kshur Neres Chanukah Lizman Boy Haisa Ar Tachas Shilton Yavan with Savam Hayehudi Haya Dal B'Mispari. Whereas in times of Chanukah, it was against the Greek army, and the Jewish army was very minute and not very trained and organized. Came spiritually, there wasn't even enough light to be found. This is the background to Chanukah versus the background to the menorah and the Beis Hamikdash. So we see a very big contrast. You have what were the four again? You have the light was the same amount, whereas in Chanukah, which was a rough time period, enough lighting every day adding. You have the Beis Hamikdash, it was by day, whereas by Chanukah is by nights, and we're going to understand what that means. We're going to understand what it means. Neres Chanukah was in the inside, the menorah was in the inside, whereas Neres Chanukah is in the outside. We're going to understand what it means. The time period contrast. And this really, the time period contrast that in the Mikdash and the Mishkan was very good. Contrast that to how it was by the time of Chanukah, and all of this we'll understand how they all connect together. Everything we do in Chanukah is the way that it is because of what was happening in that time period, and that's what we're celebrating, and that's how we relate to it and how the message that it means to us. Let's see. We'll start. Yud Beis. All of these are interconnected, like we just said. Like we said, that when it's good with Gashmius, therefore it's also good with Ruchnius. When you have you give a yid by nature when he has whatever they need, so they give it in an open and a comfortable, they're not mitzamtzim. Then, when life is good, you don't need Mesiras Nefesh. You don't need to push yourself. You don't need to get squashed and squeezed and pushed and really fight things. When you had a good sleep and you had a good breakfast and you're in a good place, so then it's easy to do all these things. But when you're sitting there, you're tired and you're hungry and people are bothering you, so then everything becomes more difficult. And then to do the right thing comes with Mesiras Nefesh. So therefore, when that situation, when it's begashmius and beruchnim is all good, then we don't need to add in lights. But everything's happening good, normal, it's good. Everything's taken care of, so I don't have to add, I don't have to push, I don't have to add more lights. I'm just nefesh anyway. And therefore also you don't need light on the outside. This is our representative of the Beis Hamikdash. They have good gashmis, good ruchnis. You don't need to add any light because what do you need to add for? Everything is good, and therefore you don't need to add even on the outside because it's good. Because it's not dark in the outside. The menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, its purpose, and this is the fundamental idea, its purpose is not to transform the outside. He's saying it's good. The outside is good. It doesn't need me. That sort of person, you live in a good time period. And it's good. I can do my own thing. Some people think they live their whole lives like this. My life, I'm busy with my things. Everything is good. I don't think about anyone else. But in the time Beis Hamikdash was saying it was good. So the menorah didn't have to have a specific topic. It didn't have the special job that it had. Unlike when you have in Chanukah. It's when they're having war, not just the war with the Greeks, but Yidden that becoming acting like the Greeks. So Yidden that they saw in the times of the Greeks, they don't need Beis Hamikdash. They want to become intermingled become connected with the Yevanim. A matzav kasha kazeh, when you have such a hard period, when people are wanting to not be Yidden and they want to be like the rest of the people, then you need to have That's what Ner Chanukah is about, and we'll have to stop here. But Ner Chanukah is exactly a whole different backdrop. The backdrop of the Beis Hamikdash and the Beis Hamikdash is when it's good begashmis, it's good beruchnis, you don't have to miss nefesh. So the menorah is staying inside, it doesn't need to add more light, it doesn't need to go on the outside. Light inside, it's good, life is good. Whereas Chanukah, and Chanukah represents in many, many ways our time period. Chanukah is when there's trouble, there's struggles. You have the Yavanim, they're trying to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. You have Yidden that are acting like the Yavanim. You know, when the Rebbe came with a moment of silence, and they were trying to implement in the government and ultimately in all different, wherever we could get it into public schools, should be a moment of silence. The people should spend a moment to think. And the Rebbe did in the beginning, wanted to do it in a moment of prayer, but then it wasn't allowed because of church and state in America. But the Rebbe said a moment of silence to think, and the parents should teach the kids what to think about. And it's transformative, and you can ask shluchim that have accomplished it, and you can see the transformative accomplishment. Well, the biggest proponent against it were Yidden. Well, the Reform and the conservative movements, that when the Yidden tried to Congress was meeting about education, and there was very much for education, and the shluchim, they were there trying to help it. The people that fought them against it the most were the Yidden. And this is what we're saying. So when that happens, then you need Hashem gives us the menorah. This is menorah. This is what Chanukah is all about. Chanukah is about when life is tough and we stand up strong, and we need to add in light. And we need light on the outside. We need to have Mesiras Nefesh. And all these things, this is what Chanukah is all about. Mitzvah Hashem, we should be able to look in Chanukah, and tomorrow continue on discussing this. We should see Chanukah in the true light, what it has to offer, ourselves, and what we can take from it, what we can do with it, and what we can accomplish with it. We should have an amazing Chanukah. Have a great day.